The film's story begins in a prison. We watch three prisoners named Jose, Mauricio and Fernandez. These prisoners were part of a group of other prisoners who were beaten and tortured inside this prison. They were arrested without any reason and without any arrest warrant and without any evidence to prove that they are criminals. They were imprisoned without a court judge's order. They do not know what the verdict was issued against them. They do not know if they were sentenced to death, to life imprisonment, or to some years. But they know that they are in solitary confinement and face the most severe forms of torture. And the reason for that was the unjust government, the goal of which is to destroy youth. Here we see the guards moving the prisoners to be transferred to another prison. We see that prison guards beat prisoners while they were being transported. The prisoners were transported by military vehicles and the prisoners were bound. And they are transferred from time to time to a different prison so that the prisoners do not think of escaping. We see the arrival of prisoners in one of the fortified prisons. When the prisoners got out of the cars, they smelled a foul smell. They hear the voices of other prisoners crying out because of the torture and beatings by the prison guards. The prison guards undressed the prisoners, handcuffed them and blindfolded them, and placed them in solitary confinement. A guard comes and pours petrol on the prisoners and covers their heads with a piece of cloth so that they don't breathe easily. And he beats them until they lose consciousness. The prison director was preventing prisoners from resting and sitting down. If one of the prisoners sits, they torture him more than before. Despite all this torture, the prisoners remained, hoping that they would be freed from prison and return to their homes and families. On the morning of the second day, they remove the cloth from their heads. And they see the sunlight, and they feel relieved because they have not seen the sunlight for a long time. A prison guard gives them a piece of paper containing some instructions that they must implement inside the prison. Among these instructions was that it was forbidden for prisoners to talk to each other. Also, it is forbidden for any prisoner to speak with any guard in the prison. Whoever does not carry out these instructions will be subject to death. As for the three prisoners, they were happy with the sunlight and the fresh air, and were not interested in the instructions. News reaches the prison director that the prisoners are feeling rested because of the sunlight. The prison director decided to close the prison's window with a piece of iron that had small holes for oxygen to pass through. Shortly after, the prisoners were transferred to another prison. After a long journey, the prisoners were unaware of their fate. And we watched their arrival at the third prison. And this prison was more cruel than the prison before it. Many years have passed since they were in prison, and their appearance has changed. They had long hair and also had a long beard. Their physical structure was weak. The prisoners were living in a room with one bed. And the food was almost non-existent because they were offered very little food. And when the new prison director reaches them, he tells them that they will remain in prison and will never get out. One of the guards takes Mauricio. When he enters, Mauricio watches his family. He was surprised when he saw his family, because he knew that this prison prevents families from visiting the prisoners. Mauricio was shocked and didn't know what to say when he saw his mother, father, and daughter in front of him. He tells his family that he will never be released from prison. When his daughter learns of this, she grieves and cries. Then one of the guards comes and takes Mauricio to the cell because the time for the visit is over. And his daughter, when she sees them hitting her father, starts crying. After a while the prisoners are transferred to the fourth prison. The prisoners will enter the prison, and this prison will be underground. They are given food and drink through a window at the top. Prison cells are solitary and circular. And on this day is New Year's Day. Prisoners hear the sounds of celebrations inside the prison. Prison guards give what they have left of food to the prisoners. Prisoners watch the festive atmosphere and fireworks through the window. They were happy when they saw this sight. And they remembered when they were outside the prison and celebrated this occasion. In this scene, a prisoner hits the prison wall with his hand. The other prisoner hears him and responds by hitting him on the wall as well. And he started talking to each other through the number of strokes for each letter. After they hear the number of strokes and count the number of letters, they write the word on the dirt. And they were able to communicate among themselves. And then we see one of the prisoners and he wants to go to the bathroom. Prison guards took him to the bathroom and handcuffed him. The prisoner was not able to sit on the toilet seat to relieve himself. So he asked them to untie him so that he can relieve himself in the bathroom. The prison guard informs the prison director of the prisoner's request. Indeed, the prison director agreed to untie him and give him a few minutes to relieve himself. But the prisoner had to relieve himself with a large number of guards watching him. The prisoner was able to take a sheet of paper in the bathroom so that he could read and write the words that reach him from the other prisoner when he hits the wall. We see one of the prisoners imagining that his mother is in front of the prison window while looking at him. Indeed, his mother was in prison and begged the guards to allow her to enter and see her son. But the director of the prison and the guards prevented her from entering. And then they are transferred to the 5th prison. And they put them in a car and it was raining and cold. The prisoners arrive at the new jail. Prison cells were big. So the prison guards drew a shape to determine the area that the prisoner is allowed to use. And if he crosses the area he is allowed to sit in, he will be killed. The prisoners communicated with each other by hitting the wall. This prison was one of the most closely monitored prisons, as prisoners used to come to watch them from above. We see one of the guards walking with the guard's girlfriend and asking him to write a letter to his daughter, who was upset with him because of a problem. Mauricio overhears their conversation and tells the guard that he will write him a letter and tells him that his daughter will love the letter. And the guard agrees. Mauricio writes a beautiful letter to his guard's son. The next day, the guards come to Mauricio and take him out of his cell. He did not know why he was being taken and he thought they were going to torture him. But we know that the prison director was the one who requested to meet Mauricio. He asked Mauricio to write him a romantic letter to his girlfriend. Mauricio writes him a romantic and beautiful letter. The prison director is impressed by what Mauricio wrote. So he rewards Mauricio and gives him food and cigarettes. Then the warden turns on the music so that Mauricio can write letters without worrying. Mauricio writes a letter to the prison director's family and tells them he misses them. The prison director liked the letter. And then they are transferred to a new prison, and while they are being transferred, one of the prisoners asked to relieve himself. So he got out of the car and relieved himself. They lifted the bag that covered his face. He was fascinated by the sunlight, which he had been denied for a long time. And then they arrived at the new prison. This prison was built of red clay, and the cells were of little height. The prison smelled awful and there were many insects. Prisoners spent hard days in this prison, until the time came to transfer them to a new prison. And when they arrived at this prison, they returned to communicate with each other by hitting the wall. This prison allowed families to visit prisoners normally. They were able to see their families at any time. Prisoners are surprised when they see the guards bringing things inside the prison. They brought them some books and some things that could make them spend their free time. The prisoners were happy with these things because they were deprived of them for many years. But after a short while, the guards took these things away without any reason. The prisoners grieve greatly. We see Jose meeting his mother. He expresses to her his regret that he will not be able to resist the prison. His mother gets up from her place and tells him that he is stronger than them and that he must not give up. The years were going by very hard for them, and they were moving from one prison to another, and each prison was tougher than the one before it. And they didn't know what their fate would be. And they wished for death because of the torment they were subjected to. Here we see Mauricio in the room of the prison director. The prison director shows the wedding ring in his hand to Mauricio. He told him that because of his letter, he was able to marry his beloved. The director of the prison decides to reward Mauricio and his friends and send them to the prison yard. They are able to see the sun and see each other. Although they saw one another, they did not speak to each other. So they enjoyed the sunlight that they were denied for many years. Now the time comes to transfer them to another prison. The cells of this prison contained a bed and a bathroom, and the prisoners were surprised when they saw a mirror in the cells. For the first time, the prisoners could see their faces, which were in bad condition. And they stayed in this prison, which was better than other prisons. After more than 12 years, this prison was the final stage. Then they will be released. The 3 prisoners, Jose, Mauricio, and Fernandez, and the remaining prisoners, come out after 12 years of their lives have passed, while they are unjustly imprisoned. And they did not believe themselves while they were outside the prison. A large number of people were receiving them because of the torture they had suffered inside the prisons. Freedom returned to the prisoners, and they were able to defeat the oppression of the government. And the government that was wrongful to its people fell. The people won and their dignity was restored. And here ends the movie.